Hey there guys, my name is Brandon from Gearist.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Peakfreak Xcrsn Zcel Outdry from Columbia. Here I go, kind of getting on my soapbox about versatility in products again, and you know, I can't think of the last time in the past 5 or so years that we've been sent a hiking shoe, which this is actually listed as a multi-sport shoe to be fair, that I haven't looked at that shoe and been like, I wonder if I can run in that. And that was exactly one of the first things that I thought with the Peakfreak Xcrsn Outdry XCEL or something like that. Quite a long name, but we'll get to that later. So again, even though this is kind of looked at more as a hiking shoe or a multi-sport shoe as listed by Columbia, this is one of those things where I looked at it, I was like, that looks like it could run quite well. And so I did, in fact, do a few runs in it. But before we get into that, let's talk about how the shoe is made, what it's all about, what incorporates the structure and all that kind of stuff. So let's start with the material of the outsole. You can see here it's actually pretty straightforward. It's a very highly durable, non-marking rubber, carbon rubber compound, if I'm not mistaken, that actually is using Columbia's Omni grip system. Now in this case, Omni grip is actually a combination of the type of rubber, the stickiness of that rubber, but also the way that it's laid out. You can see these yellow portions here, and these are meant to grip in a variety of different directions. So they're not just oriented for going uphill or downhill or kind of off camber. These are meant to really adapt to whatever you've got. The first thing that I'll say about this from my personal experience is that this outsole is very, very durable. The shoe currently has about 80 all-purpose miles on it. 25 of those, give or take, are running miles. I've had this shoe in wet, in muddy, in snowy, and icy conditions, and it handles really well. Now, in ice, of course, it's not studded, so it slides just like any other shoe on ice. For the record, no shoe without studs really grips on ice. It's just not a thing. Primarily, this outsole is really focused on traction. Now, whether that's walking or running or hiking or whatever you got going on, it's really meant to stick very well. Now, these lugs aren't particularly deep. They're about 3 millimeters deep, give or take, but they do a really nice job of gripping on a lot of stuff. And even on muddy terrain. Now, one of the things is that they don't sink down into the mud to really grip the dry stuff underneath or the drier stuff underneath, but that's okay. One of the great things about it is that being not so deep, it really didn't pick up a lot of baggage for me. Sometimes you get that sticky mud that kind of just gloms on there and then you wind up with like a slick bottom. These did a pretty good job of getting rid of that debris, and it's pretty stiff, a stiff material, so if you kick a couple rocks or something, that stuff just kind of falls right off. Now, as for running in this, it was really, really interesting because I was expecting to have that kind of, oh hey, look, I'm running in a hiking shoe type of feeling, but I didn't feel that. The grip translated really well, and even though, again, this is set up to be kind of more of a trekker, hiker, that kind of thing, the grip wasn't a hindrance and actually kind of enhanced the run when going uphill, downhill, and just basically more technical terrain that wasn't particularly crumbly. Now let's talk about the Midsole Foam that Columbia uses in here. Now what they're using is their proprietary Tech-Lite foam, which is advertised to be more resilient, more lightweight, that kind of thing. Now, a lot of times when I hear that, especially in a hiking shoe or a walking shoe or something like that, you really expect to kind of feel a spongy feel, something that's made to be for a long haul hiker and stuff like that. And I didn't feel that. Now I definitely did feel the cushioning, but it wasn't that spongy kind of cushioning where I didn't get kind of that a little bit of bounce back, you know. Sometimes you'll feel that spongy. When I say spongy, what I mean is you feel it nice and soft, but then you don't get anything back. It doesn't kind of then propel you onto the next thing or whatever. This doesn't feel like that. This is a very nice foam. It is definitely cushioned, but again, doesn't really, it doesn't deaden the footfall. So that's really nice. In terms of ground feel, not the greatest ground feel in the world, honestly. This is, again, meant to be kind of a long haul hiker, multi-sport hiking shoe, not necessarily a running shoe. So if you're looking for that kind of super, super duper sensitive in touch ground feel that you might feel in some trail running shoes, that's not going to necessarily be here. Part of that I will chalk up to the hardness of the outsole rubber. That stuff is really durable, really quite hard. And then again, that midsole, it gives you that durability and that spring back and that resilience, but it's not meant to really kind of translate the feeling of the ground back up into your foot very much. All in all, really nice kind of cushioned kind of feel to it. Now let's talk about the upper of this bad boy. I think that's where the Peakfreak really, really shines. Peakfreak Xcel Outdry really, really shines. Now, before we get to the star of the show, which is the Outdry material, let's talk about the basic other construction and other setup of the upper. Starting at the back of the shoe, the heel counter is actually kind of a graduated rigidity. So it starts actually quite firm down here by the midsole. That's because it's really where the structure comes together, and that's the case with a lot of shoes. But actually up here at the top, it becomes really quite flexible, and it's very nice. you would think that this would have some detriment sometimes on a hiking shoe, especially in off-camber stuff, but I really didn't feel that because the heel cup internally becomes very generous and locks the heel down very, very nicely. Now the mesh of the upper itself is a dual layered mesh, very, very soft, and in fact you could wear this barefoot if you want, because even one of the places where a lot of shoes kind of neglect to really shape it for a barefoot shoe is right where the tongue transitions into the vamp area, right in here, and it's very, very soft. They seem to have sewn that over. So if you really, really wanted to go barefoot in this, I don't know why you would in a hiking shoe, but you could very, very easily. Now as we move forward in the shoe, we come up to this toe cap. This thing is actually quite beefy. I mean, you can hear me kind of knocking on it, but here's the interesting thing, is that it's still got some flex to it. Now this is going to contribute obviously when the shoe gets moving and you kind of begin torquing it and giving it some kind of energy back to it. And so that's really nice to protect your feet if you have, I don't know, clumsy tendencies, maybe like this guy, maybe. Now the support structure of the shoe is made up almost entirely of this really, I'll kind of try to show it to you, it's almost a rubberized, texturized overlay that's really badass. Now if you've seen kind of bonded overlays like this in running shoes and things like that, those can be really, really durable. This is a step above that. This stuff is crazy. I mean, I've got, again, 80 hard miles on this thing and there's not a sign on it. In fact, it really washes off very well, oddly, because I've had this thing deep in some pretty nasty mud and you can see a little bit up here, but barely tell anything. It's really awesome. And the foam of the upper is also really nice. It's not overly packed with foam, but it's also not thin so that you kind of get wear spots and things like that. Now for the Outdry material, this is my favorite part of this. This stuff really acts like a Gore-tex material and it's really, really awesome. One of the first runs I did in this shoe is, it was on kind of a 50-degree-ish day, and this was in fact a run. And it had snowed a few weeks before that, so we had all this snow on the ground and then it was melting. And I took this on a trail, one of my favorite trails at Rabbit Mountain here in Colorado, and I go up there and almost immediately as soon as I hit the trails, I was running through just mud and muck and puddles, because what had happened was you get this foot of snow and then it all starts to melt and then you have this just pool sitting on top of more snow and ice. And so everything that I ran through, I mean, of course, if something came up and over the top, there's nothing you could do about that. But everything that I ran through, and you can see a picture right here, I'm standing literally in standing water. I stood there for like a solid minute and a half and nothing ever got into the upper. It was really, really amazing. Very, very impressive upper of this shoe. The material, the Outdry material is just fantastic. I mean, I had no issues with any type of moisture coming through at all, and yet it still remained pretty breathable for something like that. Is it the most breathable thing in the world? No, but no waterproof shoe is going to be. But this really does a nice job of still maintaining some breathability even when being waterproof. Now when it comes to the fit of this shoe, the sizing was right on for me. This is a size 11, it's exactly where I would expect it to be. But in terms of if you're kind of looking at this as a runner, which you can, again, I enjoyed running this, I'm going to talk more about that in the ride section, it's not going to fit nearly as close to your foot as some other running shoes, because it again is meant to be a multi-sport shoe, so like a hiker or a trekker as well. Now, so I feel like the upper is a little more open. That should probably be to account for hiking socks or things like that. What I discovered was it's not sloppy. It's just kind of a little more open than you might expect. And it would require a little bit of cinching down. So for me, you can see that the laces are actually, well, you may not be able to tell, but the laces are actually quite cinched down, a little more kind of snug than I would normally wear in another shoe. And that's just because I had to account for a lot of room that's there. Now on the upside, if you've got a wider foot, or if you like to wear particularly thick socks, this is going to give you ample room to be able to do that. What I will say is that if you're going to get the shoe, you're thinking about getting the shoe, it's probably a really good idea to either try it on, or if you're buying it online or something like that, make sure you're working with a retailer like Zappos or something like that, where you can buy this and then definitely return it without fear of not getting your money back or not being able to make an even exchange. Now let's talk about the performance of this shoe. One of the things that you'll notice if you're a runner, you're going to pick the shoe up and you're going to be like, oh my god, it's heavy. Now I am used to seeing shoes that are 7 ounces and under. I mean, I've seen shoes that are what, like 2.5 ounces and things like that. For a size 9 in this shoe, you're getting about 12.8 ounces per shoe. That is no joke. It is heavier than a runner, but keep in mind, this is a really versatile hiker, trekker, and you can also run in it. I'm not saying it's a running shoe, so if you're a runner, you're looking at this going, that is heavy as hell for a running shoe. Don't just look at it as a running shoe. Look at it for how versatile it is. From a strictly kind of on the trail performance perspective, it does really, really well. When you're hiking in this, it's just fantastic. And again, I've worn this as just kind of a kicking around, running errands with the kiddo shoes and things like that. But I've also worn it hiking, I've worn it trekking, which is straight up off the trail, and I've worn it running. One of the great things about it is that when I found myself running in it, I was kind of expecting to be like, oh my God, it's so heavy, and it was gonna wear on my legs a little bit, but it didn't. And I think the reason for that is because I was like, sweet, I see a big ass puddle, I'm gonna go run through that. It's just really cool to kind of be able to aim for mud puddles and just go straight through them and without worrying about whether the mud and all that crap's gonna get into your shoe. It's really nice. If you do plan on doing some running in this shoe, one of the things that you should be aware of is that while it does have fantastic traction, again, these lugs are not super, super deep. So they're not going to grab on some looser terrain. They're gonna be fantastic for 99% of the trails you're gonna hit, but when you get on those looser descents and ascents, it's not really gonna grab deeply as much as you might want to see. But to be fair, most of us really don't run trails like that, so keep that in mind. And before we leave talking about the performance of the shoe, let me be very clear. This is not a running shoe per se. It is listed as a multi-sport shoe by Columbia, and I ran in it 25 miles worth, and I really enjoyed running in it. It's a little bit heavy, and it's actually a little bit stiff too. You saw me earlier kind of fold, and it flexes really nicely in the forefoot, but when you get behind the forefoot, it's kind of, you got to really put the screws to it to bend it up. But it does flex right through here. Interestingly, somebody on one of our YouTube comments said the other day, I don't know about you, or I'm paraphrasing, I don't know about you, but my foot only bends at the forefoot. Where else does it bend? Well, I gotta tell you guys, your foot bends everywhere. Even your calcaneus, your heel bone, is a flexible part of your foot. It might not be nearly as flexible as the forefoot, but it does all flex, so flexibility is very important. Probably my favorite thing about this shoe, apart from the Outdry, is the fact that it can be so many things to so many different people. If you're a runner who likes to be out on the trail and, you know, maybe stop for a hike or something like that, or you just want a hiking shoe, this can be for you. If you're a hiker who all of a sudden likes to kind of pick it up and just go for a little jaunt up the trail a ways, this can be for you. It's something quick that you can do some rock hopping and things like that. A really very, very versatile shoe, and that Outdry, its durability and the ability to keep this thing clean, which again, 80 miles through mud, you can't see anything, and it's not like I washed this, I just kind of hosed it off. The price tag is $110, which is, in my opinion, very, very good. This is something that you can get on your foot in all those different situations, and so it's a really multi-purpose, kind of this Swiss Army knife of shoes almost. Now, if you'd like to help support us here at Gearist, as well as checking out the Columbia Peakfreak Xcrsn Zcel Outdry, you can do so by clicking those buy links down in the description below. Every time you do that, it doesn't cost you anything else, but every time you buy something, it helps us out just a little bit. Now, our question of the day for you guys is, do you have a Swiss Army knife type shoe that you don't mind hiking in? You can go run errands with the kids in, or you can go running in. If you do, let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for spending a few minutes with us today. If you've got any questions about this video, any of our videos, or any of our reviews for that matter, please let us know. You can do so by leaving a question down in the comment section below here, or email info@gearist.com. You can also find us on all of our social media outlets, which you can see right there, or just visit Gearist.com. We'd be happy to talk to you. Don't forget our Ask Gearist series, where we answer your questions about pretty much anything. One of our most recent ones was how to change a road bike tire. Super, super helpful, and actually works for mountain bike tires as well. Also, don't forget that you can find the Gearist podcast in iTunes and on Stitcher just by going into each of those stores and just typing Gearist, G-E-A-R-I-S-T. It's totally free. Subscribe, listen. It's a pretty awesome thing to hear. Thanks again, guys, for spending a few minutes with us today, and we'll see you next time.